Chair, good morning. We're ready to hear from our first witness, if she could be sworn.
You're welcome to be seated. I, Lydia Fraser-Ward, do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you very much.
Could you state first your full name for the record, please?
Lydia Leslie Summer Fraser-Ward.
Thank you. Lydia, you are the sister of Pippa Whitewood, who died on the 29th of October 2016 when she was 36 years old. At the time of her death, her sons were 5 years old and 4 months old. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
By way of background, the inquiry sent to you under Rule 9 of the inquiry rules a request for Rule 9 evidence, and in response you provided a witness statement which you should have a copy of in front of you.
Yes.
The witness statement is 59 pages long, and if you could look please at page 59, there you provided a statement of truth and signed your witness statement.
Yes.
Are you happy that your witness statement is accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. That witness statement, as I think has been explained to you, now stands as your evidence to the inquiry, and as a result you understand I don't intend to take you through that witness statement line by line, but please be assured that all of it has been carefully considered both by the Chair and by this inquiry as a whole. I would like to acknowledge that you also, Lydia, came before the inquiry in September 2024 when you gave commemorative and impact evidence about Pippa's death, and also set out very detailed opening submissions to this inquiry, and to say at this stage that the inquiry is very grateful for that evidence and for your detailed opening submissions at the time, as well as for your evidence today.
Great.
If we turn first, and I'm hoping that it will help if I refer you to the paragraph and page numbers as we're going along, I understand that there are a couple of matters that you want to raise in terms of opening remarks. First of all, about Pippa's illness and the fact that she was well for most of her life.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you look at page 2, paragraph 8 of your witness statement, you
Yes.
tell us there that for most of her life she was well and did not require treatment. And
That's correct, yeah.
Go on, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, she was. Pippa was a very... how can you summarise a person's whole life? Generally, Pippa was a happy, sort of comfortable, sociable person. She was actively involved in her community, wherever she lived. In fact, more than the average person. Wherever Pippa went, she got involved in groups, community activities, far more than me. I mean, I sort of looked up to her in that respect, that didn't matter if she was staying somewhere only for 2 or 3 months. She would go there, she would get to know the place, she would make friends. She
Yes.
was really good at making friends with people. She was easy to talk to, she was a very good listener, and so it wasn't as if she was sort of constantly in and out of hospital her whole life. That was not the case at all.
Yes.
Pippa was either working or being a full-time mum, or in full-time education throughout her life, and she was actively involved, like I said, in community groups. And when she died, she was a local councillor in South Woodham Ferrers where she lived. She was the treasurer of the parish council for some time. I mean, her husband always used to complain, it takes so long to get home. Because whenever we go out, she gets stopped by everyone on the way home. They all want to have a conversation with her about something or other.
Yes.
So she was very, very well loved within her community where she lived, and a sort of very active person, I would say, in the world in general.
Yes. And you go on to say that, and this will become important, she really did have a very large and very close and loving network of support from family and friends.
She did, yes, yeah. And actually, as part of my preparation for this evidence, I was able to look through some of her old text messages, which was a bit of an unexpected sort of experience. And just I mean, she lost her phone only a few weeks before she died, and even with this new phone, it was just full of messages from friends saying, how are you doing, are you all right? And she was in constant contact with people wanting to meet up with her, and I mean, obviously she had a baby as well, so she was in a network of mums with young children as well.
Yes.
But she was, you know, very well loved by lots of people. And I remember at her funeral, there were so many people. I don't mean to exaggerate, it's not hyperbole. There were so many people at her funeral. It was standing room only. So all the seats were full, and then there were people just standing at the back. Everyone came out to celebrate her life.
Yes.
Because she was so well loved. Yeah.
Thank you. The other thing that you tell us in the opening part of your witness statement that I think is important to note now is that you point out and ask this inquiry to hold in its mind that postnatal depression is a very common condition, and you cited the figures. The NHS estimate that it affects 1 in 10 new mothers.
Yes, I would say that may well be an underestimate, in my opinion, being a mum myself. I think from my experience, all the mums that I know are always concerned or worried about postnatal depression maybe affecting them. Or even if you don't have PND itself, you can often, as any mum will tell you, have ups and downs, and you have highs and lows. And it's an emotional roller coaster being a new mum, whether it's your first child or your 15th. And so unfortunately for Pippa, it did affect her very severely.
Yes.
And I don't know if she was predisposed to be at a higher risk genetically or just because of her personality, or if she was just unlucky.
Yes.
But unfortunately, yes, she did suffer from postnatal depression.
Yes. And one of the other things you go on to say is that the more serious condition of postpartum psychosis, which is a diagnosis that Pippa also received, is much more rare and thought to affect around about 1 in 1,000 women.
That's correct, yeah.
But nonetheless, what I think, and you must correct me if I'm wrong, you're asking this inquiry to hold in its mind is the fact that although that condition is fairly rare, it is a condition that is triggered by a perfectly ordinary and very beautiful part of life, which is starting or adding to a family.
That's right, yeah. It's so desperately unfair. I mean, I think any mental health condition is desperately unfair. No one wants to be unwell, physically or mentally. None of us do.
Yes.
But it's something we all have to go through life, isn't it? Trying to keep ourselves in our best fitness, wellness, however you want to describe it. But unfortunately, in Pippa's case, she was affected by this rather rare condition, which can be recovered from. In fact, it in almost all cases is recovered from.
Yes.
What is so desperately tragic about her case was that she should have made a full recovery.
Yes.
If her medical treatment had been conducted swiftly and appropriately.
Yes.
And that's why it's so terribly sad what happened to her, because it didn't have to happen.
Yes. Thank you. Lydia, I'm looking now at page 6 of your witness statement, and at the bottom of that page, starting at paragraph 18, you have set out some details about the earlier part of Pippa's life and the history of her mental health. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, you tell us there quite a bit about Pippa's character, and you tell us that apart from being a high achiever, she was a person who inherently felt a pressure to achieve and to succeed. Is that right?
Yes, although it wasn't obvious. That wasn't obvious in her character at all.
I see.
If you met her, she seemed fairly laid back, quite relaxed. She was incredibly intelligent, far more intelligent than me. She generally did well at school without too much stress or strain.
Yes.
There wasn't a pressured environment at home to succeed. We were fortunate to have a good education. It's not like we didn't have much money, but we were fortunate to be privately educated because of certain schemes that were available at that time.
Yes.
For children from, I don't want to say low-income families, but from from families that couldn't afford to be privately educated.
Yes.
We both thankfully benefited from a placement scheme that allowed us to go to private school. And so we were both very lucky in that respect. But even if she hadn't gone there, she always would have done well, because she was very, very clever. And she must have fixated on this need to be worthy of success, to be worthy of love, to be worthy of attention. And I don't know where that stemmed from, but that was something that has clearly come out after she died. I didn't really feel that through her life as her sister. Didn't ever feel like, oh, I'm this high achiever, I must do this, I must do that. I did feel that when she had children, perhaps she wished she could have done more before she had children. I did get the sense that, like, she may have wanted to have finished her degree, or she did end up finishing her teacher training, but it was always later. Everything sort of always got postponed in life. And I think there was part of her that felt like, was she going to have the opportunity to do the things she wanted to do? Which, again, I think all parents feel like that, don't they?
Yes.
You think, when am I going to get back to being me? But it wasn't. She was like, oh, I must get A stars in everything. She wasn't one of those people. She wasn't this workaholic or anything like that at all. And I think actually it was something that she kept, that feeling of that need to be worthy, as I would say, more than achieve, is sort of be worthy of love, of friendship, of success, was something that was deeply personal to her and actually quite private, and something that became far more apparent to me having seen her, you know, personal notes and diaries after she died. That was like, my goodness, I had no idea she was struggling so much with this.
Yes.
Because it's not something that she ever shared with me directly, that feeling.
I understand. And I think that's another matter that you note throughout your witness statement, which was that very often, even when she was in the depths of her worst struggles or particularly vulnerable, as you see it now looking back, because much of this you have learnt, as you've explained, either from her diaries or from seeing other documents after her death. As you see it, is this right? She was very adept at masking the struggles that she was going through.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's what's the word I'm looking for? There's a dichotomy, a struggle here, because in some ways she was very open about her illness. She didn't hide that she was having hospital treatment. She told friends that she was going into hospital. I can't meet you for lunch because I'm in hospital again.
Yes.
So she never hid the fact that she was receiving treatment. But I think what she did do was perhaps hide the extent to which she was struggling.
Yes.
She didn't really want to show people how far she was struggling. She could ask for help, but I think she found it difficult to perhaps but to express to friends and family the extent to which she was struggling. She always put a brave face on things, and she tried so hard to manage and cope herself. She kept trying to deal with it herself and deal with her treatment herself. And perhaps she didn't want to worry us. Perhaps she didn't want to be a burden. I think there was a lot of that at play as well.
Yes.
Certainly she didn't want to be a burden to her children, is something that sort of came up in her diaries and things. And, you know, it must have been terribly hard for her, that struggle of sort of accepting that she was unwell and trying to accept treatment to get better for the sake of her family and her children, and at the same time not trying to worry them and trying to be strong and be brave and say, I will get better, I will get better.
Yes. You say that in the early part of her life, there was an episode, I think, where, as you describe it, Pippa came under immense stress during her GCSEs and at that stage took an overdose of paracetamol.
Yes, yeah. It was, from memory, it wasn't a massive amount.
Yes.
And I guess that left this sort of uncertainty with us of was it a genuine attempt, or was it cry for help? And because she didn't talk really much about what happened, certainly didn't talk to me about it, it was hard to know. And she was so young. She was just a child, really.
Yes.
And it was a very strange time for all of us that it just suddenly happened one day. I remember Pippa's not going to school today because she tried to take an overdose last night. I was like, oh, goodness, right. And she just dropped out of school from that point on.
Yes.
And I had no idea that she was worrying about her exams. It never occurred to me. And even now, my mum has been saying to me, you know, it was so unexpected, because actually Pippa was doing really well at school.
Yes.
And she was a very adept pupil. She was very capable.
Yes.
So we had no doubt that she was probably going to do quite well. So we don't really know where that came from, because it was just so unexpected. And again, she must have been masking a lot of that worry and concern and not sharing it with us.
Yes.
And I don't know why she was afraid of failing, because there was no indication that she was not going to do well. But clearly she had that concern, that anxiety.
Yes. As far as you're aware, thereafter, Pippa had no particular struggles with her mental health until after the birth of her first child. Is that right?
Well, that's what I knew.
Yes.
I mean, sort of looking at different documents and things, sometimes there are references in the very few medical notes that I've had access to. She's clearly confided in a clinician and talked about, they've asked her about her history, and she's talked about, oh, well, I had struggles this time and this time and this time. But I mean, it's nothing that any of us were ever aware of. So if she was struggling in her 20s, none of us knew about it, and it was not apparent. Perhaps in a scenario where she is opening up or reflecting and being introspective and really sort of ruminating on her past, maybe then when she's in an environment with a clinician and she's really thinking and reflecting, she might then go, well, actually my 20s were a bit like this.
Yes.
So it could be that that's why that's in her notes, but it's certainly nothing that ever presented itself visibly.
It didn't become apparent?
No, not at all. And it's not like she was on any medication or having any treatment. Not to my knowledge. There was never any indication of that.
Yes.
No.
Thank you. So if we move to the period after the birth of Pippa's first child, what you tell us is that there was quite a fast downward spiral in terms of her mental health at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was quite unclear with her first son. She had the baby, and then after that, her behaviour just sort of changed. She didn't appear unwell. She didn't have any mania or anything like that. She just, she seemed sort of tense all the time. You were afraid to sort of bring things up because you didn't want to stress her out, worry her. I just thought, well, maybe it's just being a new mum. She's just tired and exhausted. But it felt like her personality changed. It felt like she was a slightly different version of herself. I didn't see her as much as I would have liked to have seen her at that time, as I think I was still in my 20s or early 30s, and I was working a lot, and I would go to visit when I could.
Yes,
but,
this was 2011.
Yes.
Yes.
So I remember now, actually, she went into labour at my 30th birthday party, and in typical Pippa fashion, didn't tell me. So we were all out and having a meal. And she said, I'm going to go home, I'm feeling tired. And she was obviously heavily pregnant. And I only found out afterwards that she'd actually been having contractions and been going into labour and just not said anything.
Yes.
So Pippa. So, yes, my eldest nephew, I think, was born the day after my 30th birthday. So she did sort of, she just sort of became a slightly different version of herself.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, oh, gosh, I really miss Pippa, the way we used to hang out. I just rather selfishly kind of just wanted to spend time with her and, go out and go watch a movie together or something, and knew that I couldn't really do that anymore because she was a new mum and she had to look after her baby. And I couldn't fully empathise, having not had children myself at that time, and being the younger sister. I mostly just wanted my bigger sister around to hang out with, and knew that she wouldn't be as available.
Yes.
But I do recall, from that time, although I wasn't seeing her much myself, my mother was, and she was worried about her. Okay, there would be occasions where she became worried. So we were just talking about it this morning. She went out, and my mum became completely panicked about the fact that she'd gone out for a walk with the baby on her own.
Yes.
And she was so frantic. She started going around town looking for her. I was like, why? At the time I was thinking, why are you so worried? What's the problem? And if you was, I think when she'd gone out for this walk, it hadn't occurred to Mum that it was a problem, and then suddenly she sort of started to think, oh, maybe it is a problem, and started to panic and worry about her, and then started to look for her. And then she came home, and it was fine. But there was this sort of sense of, is she going to be okay? Like, she seems okay on the surface, but you can feel underneath there's this tense nature just bubbling under, and sort of a little bit on eggshells with her. Yes. Of course, I only found out much later, after her death, that she did in fact start to sort of I don't know if she received treatment. She did. She started to receive some cognitive behavioural therapy, but I had no idea that was happening. Yes. And she did receive this diagnosis of bipolar disorder.
In 2011?
Well, apparently, yes. Although there's so few medical notes.
Yes.
I can't be sure of how reliable that is.
So that information, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
I understand, Lydia, that the information about that diagnosis having been given in 2011, in fact, comes from the NEPT care plan.
Yes.
Which was actually drawn up, as you understand it, as best we can from the very few documents that you have. That NEPT care plan was actually drawn up in June 2016, following the birth of Pippa's second son.
Yes.
When she was at Broomfield Maternity Ward and requested a mental health assessment.
Yes, that's right. So it's reflecting on historic events, and therefore it's sort of secondary information. So we don't know how reliable a lot of this information is, because there are inaccuracies in many of the medical reports. So therefore the exact year or date or location where she may or may not have received treatment, or may not have been given a diagnosis.
Yes.
I can't vouch for the accuracy of it, because it seems to sort of be second-hand information.
Or reflexive information, as you say.
Yes, so there is a lot of uncertainty around that. And certainly, I had no knowledge of that diagnosis until after she died.
Yes.
And I think there's a query, I don't know if, I don't believe, and again I'm speaking for other people, but I don't believe that either she, her husband, or our mother ever believed that was a true diagnosis. It could have been. And I'm familiar with the kind of treatment and medication that is needed for a condition of that nature. Well, Pippa never displayed anything remotely symptomatic of that condition.
Yes.
In the whole of my life that I knew her. She never presented with any mania to me ever, or highs or lows, or any unexpected behaviour or any need for medication at any time.
Yes.
I'm not saying that she didn't have bipolar disorder. I'm just saying that if she did, she managed it so well that none of us knew about it.
Yes.
And she herself may not have believed it to be the case. There's sort of the jury's out on whether that was a diagnosis or not a diagnosis.
Yes,
I understand. Which again leads to more lack of clarity, I'm afraid, around the whole thing.
Yes.
That there doesn't seem to be any clear answer as to whether she really did have it or not. But we can suspect that she did. She was certainly... and I don't know enough about... I know a bit about the disorder, but not enough to know whether it's a spectrum, and whether there are sort of early indicators
or degrees
or risks.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes,
So,
I understand. I understand what you say about being entirely unable at this stage to be able to confirm the accuracy of that kind of reflective summary that you have seen in the NEPT care plan from 2016. Apart from noting that there had apparently been a diagnosis of bipolar disorder in 2011, my understanding from your witness statement is that that care plan noted that in 2011, again reflectively, so from 2016, noted that in 2011 Pippa had experienced periods of mania and had at that stage made plans to end her life.
I mean, it's just news to me.
Yes.
Because it's not anything that any of us had ever heard about happening.
I understand.
So, I guess the accuracy of this is going to be awkward, because if she's being asked about this in 2016 when she is in a period of mania,
Yes.
she may then be reflecting on things that aren't true, because she cannot judge for herself what is real and not real anymore.
Yes.
And there was definitely, I do know that certainly towards just before she died, when she was in the throes of this illness, she did question what her memories were,
Yes.
what were real and weren't real anymore. And so I suppose if the only medical notes we're going on are from those few short months when she was in a mania period, how can anything that she was reflecting on from earlier in her life may or may not be an accurate reflection of what actually happened? So,
Of course.
unless I saw a medical document from 2011, which I've never seen, I've never found, never heard anything from that period where she was receiving treatment or feeling suicidal or anything. None of us saw anything like that. Then it is just her reflecting on her own health during a period when she's unwell.
Yes, because that period was immediately following the birth of her second son, when she was, and we'll come to this, overtly unwell in a way that you were able to notice and you were able to see. Coming to that, Lydia, I understand that Pippa's second child was born prematurely on the 10th of June 2016. As far as you are aware, despite the matters we've been discussing that appear in that NEPT care plan from after the birth of her second son, as far as you are aware, had Pippa been provided in the lead up to the birth of her second child with any sort of specialist psychiatric or midwifery support in relation to her mental health?
As far as I'm aware, she wasn't. But she could have been, and the notes have been lost, or there's no reference to any specific planning in any of the notes that I have seen. And she certainly didn't tell me of any special planning. I do remember very clearly that when she told us the news that she was expecting a second child, I suddenly had this feeling of deep fear and concern.
Yes.
Because although nothing obvious happened after the birth of the first child, I do remember that she'd become unwell and unpredictable, and I remember that episode where our mother had been concerned for her safety.
Yes.
And so she, actually by this time, sort of 5 years on, she had been her old self. We'd been hanging out together. She was finally sort of getting back into her life, and I remember finding out that she was pregnant again, being happy for her, obviously delighted for her, but fearful. And I remember saying the next day, after that news had been told to us in person, it was Christmas time, we were all at my house, and she told us the next day, speaking to our mother on the phone and saying, "You remember how ill she got last time? So I'm just worried about that, just worried about her."
Yes.
But that was all. So I was aware that she may become unwell, but obviously she'd had a child already and she'd got through it. And to my knowledge, at that time, I didn't know she'd had any cognitive behavioural therapy. So to my knowledge, I thought she managed it on her own and she got through it and she was fine.
Yes.
So she can do it again. So it'll be all right, and we're here for her.
Yes.
So I was obviously very happy for her.
Yes. I understand. When you went to visit Pippa, in fact, so the plan had been for her to have her, talking now about her second baby, to have her baby at St. Peter's Hospital in Malden. But because of the unexpected premature birth, in fact, she was at Broomfield.
Yes.
And I understand that just 2 days after her baby was born, you and your husband went to visit her there.
Yes, it was about that time, yeah.
Is it right to say you were immediately concerned about her state of mind?
Not immediately. We stayed for a couple of hours.
Yes.
And you just have an instinct, don't you? When you're to people that you're very close to people that you love dearly, you recognise them, and you recognise when they're not themselves.
Yes.
And I could just tell something wasn't right. I was like, well, she just had a baby, she's just given birth, and she's a bit out of sorts. But no, I could tell. All I said at the time, after I left, so I did the thing that I always do, because I'm a total clown, and I went there and I tried to make her laugh, and I was trying to make her laugh, and I was telling jokes and being silly and mucking around, and everything I was doing was clearly just irritating her and not having the complete opposite effect of what I'd hoped for. And I was like, oh dear, okay, I'm just making things worse, blah, 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 blah. I'll just sit and chat, and it gave her some gifts. And then, yes, when we left, I said to my husband, as soon as we walked out of the hospital, I said, we shouldn't have come. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come here. And I remember saying that very clearly out loud to him. And that was all. That was all that I said at the time. But I had a feeling that something wasn't right. But it's never this obvious, I'm unwell. I'm clearly unwell. It's so subtle. There are such subtle cues that you pick up on.
From someone you know very, very well.
Exactly.
And I think at places in your witness statement you describe her as presenting as upbeat and being able to smile, but to you, because of how close you were and how well you knew her, and perhaps sibling instinct and all of those other things, you could see that that was a thin veneer, and that she just, as you've described it, I think, wasn't herself. There was something not right beneath that veneer.
Yes. She was coping. She was clearly tired, very tired, but she was coping, and she was muddling along, you know. And, you know, it had been a premature birth, so it was unexpected. Caught her a bit by surprise. She wasn't, you know, expecting the baby so soon.
Yes.
And the baby was having some light therapy and things like that, so the stay in the hospital was longer than it would have usually have been.
Yes.
So it was this longer stay in hospital that obviously I imagine none of us prefer to go home, don't we? So.
And when you is this right? When you visited her 2 days after her baby had been born, in fact, the baby was being kept in a separate part of the hospital than where Pippa was.
Yes, Pippa had a separate room at that time, and the baby was, if I remember rightly, it was a while ago, but it was in a sort of ward where there were other beds and other mothers and other children around. So her bed was not next to the baby.
No.
The bed was somewhere else. And I don't know if she had requested a quite separate room at that time, or if she'd been put there, or they didn't have enough space in that ward, or what. I've no idea. But that was the case then. Yeah.
And one of the effects of that you have now seen in the documents, I think, in particular her diaries and the care plan that we've been discussing, is that where Pippa was placed in that hospital was busy and chaotic and noisy, and she was really struggling to sleep.
The room she was in was private.
I see.
On that day. I don't know if she'd been in that room the whole time, but the room was under the helipad of the hospital. So the helicopter ambulances were landing on top above her.
Yes.
And she had been saying to our mother there was a lot of noise from that was keeping her awake. I mean, obviously it's a hospital, you know, there's going to be noise, but that in particular had been keeping her awake.
Yes.
And she had been unable to sleep at all. As far as I'm aware, she hadn't slept since she'd had the baby for two or three days then, and she was becoming increasingly exhausted and tired.
Yes. One of the things that you say, if you want to look at it, you don't need to, but if you want to, it's I'm now at page 11 and paragraph 33 of your witness statement.
Yeah.
One of the things that Pippa had reported is that she hadn't slept for 7 days due to, as you say, the helipad, babies crying, alarms beeping, and the general noise of a hospital ward.
Yeah.
What you go on to say, given what we have noted about what else is in that NEPT care plan and the apparent, whether it's accurate or not, the record of a diagnosis of bipolar disorder back in 2011, what you tell us in paragraph 34 is that thinking that through and knowing that sleep deprivation is a very well documented trigger of postpartum psychosis, you would have expected that information, that Pippa was having sleepless nights, to have brought about some sort of action.
Yeah, I would have. I mean, why wouldn't it? Unless they didn't have her notes, which is highly possible, because she was in a different hospital from the one she expected to be in.
Yes.
Did they have her notes or not, I don't know. But if they had, and they had seen that she was either had a diagnosis of bipolar disorder or was at risk or had cognitive behavioural therapy after her first child, I mean, surely when you... I recall from having my own children, when you go through your antenatal preparation, you get asked loads of questions, endless questions about your medical history, and they have all these notes about you, and your folder goes with you everywhere.
Yes.
And in my own case, so I had my first child after Pippa died, but because of what happened to her, I said I could be at risk. Unfortunately, I'm lucky. I've never had any problems in that area. I'm lucky to not have had any concerns about mental health. But nonetheless, I wanted to be prudent, and I said, this happened to my sister, so I'm going to tell you everything that happened to her, and I want you to write it all over my notes, so that if I start behaving differently, unexpectedly, I want you to raise this as a concern that I could be unwell.
Yes.
Right? And thankfully that didn't happen to me. But in Pippa's case, that should have been all over her medical notes, that she was a high-risk patient.
Yes.
In my case, I was referred to a specialist team. Even though I had no history of mental health illness, I was referred to a specialist midwifery team as a preventative measure. Because
of the close genetic connection and because it was a possibility.
Yes. Yeah.
Can I just ask you about that? That was in Newham, I know.
London Borough of Redbridge.
Oh, Redbridge.
I live in London Borough of Redbridge, but I was actually being treated at a hospital in Waltham Forest, London Borough of Waltham Forest, Whips Cross. Okay. So that was part of NELFT. It's part of the same trust, as far as I'm aware. I'm pretty sure Whips Cross is part of NELFT as well. Okay. I think. I could be wrong.
And what did that sort of preventative plan for you actually mean in practice?
It didn't happen with my second son because I was well with my first child. Yeah. I just went through the normal antenatal process for my second child. With my first child, I was referred to this special purple midwifery team, which meant that I had the same midwife for all of my appointments. I was given a contact phone number in case of emergencies if I felt I was unwell, if I had any burning questions about the pregnancy, if I was becoming concerned about the pregnancy, even after birth, if I was concerned about the baby. So I had a number that I could call during working hours. It wasn't a 24-hour number, but it was a number that I could call. I had more frequent appointments, so many more appointments than you would normally have. So I think sort of every 3 to 4 weeks I would go in, I would answer more questions, I would have more regular scans. There was this sort of continual kind of, let's reassure you that the pregnancy is fine. Yes. You don't need to worry, everything looks fine. Because obviously when you are having antenatal care, the scans are quite far apart. For anyone who's had children, you sort of have one at 12 weeks, one at 20 weeks, and that's it. Yes. And then you don't know how it's progressing. And I can understand for many women that must be quite worrying. Yes. Unless they've had children before. For your first pregnancy, you might be, I hope the baby's all right, I hope everything's okay. And I actually had a further complication. I had a medical complication called my first child, So in some ways it sort of went hand in hand with a physical condition where they wanted to do extra scans just to make sure that I was okay. But Pippa should have had some sort of regular, at least a continuing midwife.
Yes.
She's gone back to the same person so that they could have continued to assess how her pregnancy was developing, and they would know her. They would know the details of the pregnancy. So every time you're going in, you're not having to once again explain triage and explain the whole medical history. So I think that consistency is very important for high-risk patients, and it's not above and beyond what's possible, because it is happening in other parts of the country.
Yes.
And I don't see it as some great expense. If anything, it would save the NHS money because it's preventative. The whole point is that it identifies if a problem is occurring before it occurs, rather than trying to deal with it and treat it after it's happened, or treat a patient who suddenly develops something like psychosis, which is a very serious condition. The whole point is to prevent that from happening in the first place.
Thank you.
It's okay.
In fact, what happened, I think, to Pippa is that when her sleeplessness was discussed, and again, this is something that you have been able to pick up from the records, the NEPT care plan that was put in place at that time simply states, the author states, I do not feel that Pippa will need long-term support and she may be discharged in a week or two.
Yeah.
And in fact, that is what happened, and she was discharged on the 17th of June. One of the things you tell us about here is that there does not appear to have been, at least from the records that you have, and we understand that those are limited, that NEPT care plan that in fact Pippa had requested, because of how she was feeling, she had requested an assessment, contains what you refer to as boilerplate wording. It's not a tailored care plan.
That's right.
And to you it appears to have been almost oblivious to the severity of the risk.
Definitely.
To Pippa.
No doubt about it. The only part of this care plan that has any kind of details when it talks about her personal history. So there's a long sort of drawn out paragraph that outlines her mental health history and her medical history, which sort of says, she'd had some problems with her first child, etc., etc. But then when it goes through the rest of the plan with the other questions about what the plan actually is to do and what's the next steps and etc., etc., there's nothing there, or it's just a standard answer. It's not signed by her. There doesn't appear to be any contributions from her specifically. The only sort of personalised note is this note that, she seems okay, I'm sure she'll be fine in a couple of weeks type comment.
Yes.
Which is from a person that clearly doesn't know anything about her or her history, even though it's in there that she's had this history.
Yes.
There's no identification that she is at high risk. And actually, looking back now, with hindsight, she was in a period of mania when she was being assessed, because you can see from her diaries. So I think this assessment was either the day that she was discharged or the day before she was discharged.
Yes.
That night she goes home and she keeps she's very good at keeping diaries while she has a newborn, and she's making notes every night of when the baby's going to sleep, when the baby's waking up, feeding the baby, all of these notes. That first night she was at home, she has made more than, I think, 7 pages of notes going on and on and on in this diary.
Yes.
Doing this, doing that, sitting down, going out, blah, 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 blah. This is a person in a state of complete mania. So she would have been manic during this assessment.
Yes.
And that's obviously not been picked up. I don't know how that could have been missed. But she was already unwell at that time, and it wasn't noticed.
Yes. And in fact, I think that NEPT care plan records no response in relation to all of the questions in it about Pippa's mental well-being.
That's right, yeah.
It also, because the plan in fact was for the baby to stay at Broomfield and for Pippa to go home, principally so that she could try and recover some sleep.
That's right, yeah.
But as far as you can see from it, there appears to have been no consideration, or certainly there's no record of any consideration of how being separated from her newborn baby might affect her, and the balance between
Exactly.
the need to sleep and separation
Yeah.
from her newborn baby.
Absolutely. And again, like from looking at her diaries, there's this sense of guilt in the writing where she's saying, oh, I need to go home so I can sleep, so I can get better for the baby, but I feel guilty about leaving the baby, and I should be with the baby, and I should be caring for the baby. So she's being torn in two different directions.
Yes.
About sort of feeling like she's failing the child, but also failing herself. She's so desperate to get better that she almost can't.
Yes.
It's exacerbating her situation and her condition.
Yes, and I think those diaries that you're referring to, I think you say in your witness statement that it almost seems clear that she was unsupported with those fundamentally important aspects of that decision, because she wrote herself, probably, as you say, in a state of mania and desperately trying to do the right thing by herself and everyone else. She wrote herself a pros and cons list about whether she should do what was being suggested. Will the baby feel that I've abandoned him? She also had a 5-year-old at home at the time, or not a 5-year-old, but a younger child at home at the time.
Yes.
Do you think she could have masked what she was feeling?
It's possible. I mean, it's in Pippa's case, it's probable. It is probable. But I think by that stage, it must have been apparent. I didn't see her at that time. Obviously, I saw her several days before. But I think if she was in a state where she was writing the way she was writing, it must have been apparent by that point. I would be amazed if it wasn't. I mean, certainly to a trained clinician, it should have been obvious. Perhaps not to a person who didn't know, or a person with no medical training, but anyone that's doing a psychological assessment surely should be able to tell if a person is in a manic state or not. And she must have been at that time. And the fact that most of the answers just say no response makes no sense. Is it just that those questions weren't asked, and so that later when the care plan was typed up, they put no response because they just didn't ask the questions? Because I find it highly unlikely that they would have asked her something and she just sat there as a selective mute. I can't believe that either.
But
or
you
else
can't
that would have been noted, surely, that no response because it's selective mute. It just doesn't say, because I am assuming the questions weren't asked. And it's so frustrating for me because all of the indications were there. Her history, her high risk, and her asking for help, her going out and asking for the... It's not like someone saw her and said, oh, you need to be assessed.
No.
She had got to a point of desperation where she was saying, please, I want to be assessed, because she herself could recognise that she was becoming unwell and she was asking for help. That's what she was doing. She was asking for help as best she could.
One of the only offers of support of any kind that appears to be referenced in that document is the offer of sleeping tablets. And she was concerned about that, as you understand it from her diaries and her own notes, because she was still breastfeeding the baby and wasn't clear on what the impact on him would have been.
Well, the baby was only a few days old.
Yes.
And, you know, anyone who's had a baby knows that those first sort of 2 or 3 weeks are so critical in terms of establishing breastfeeding. If you don't keep it up, if you have long pauses, your milk supply can suddenly evaporate and then it all goes out the window. And she desperately wanted to breastfeed because she knew that was what was best for the baby, and she didn't want to jeopardise that. That's why she was making so many notes about when she was feeding, how much the baby was taking. You know, we do that as new parents. You do that a lot. That those first few days are so critical. It's kind of what we think about. And so the thought of taking sleeping medication that could be, have adverse effects on the baby, she didn't want to risk taking a medication that could harm the baby, especially as he was premature as well. So she put the baby first and decided that it wasn't appropriate to take sleeping tablets because of that reason. But she wasn't offered... I mean, I think by this point it was almost too late.
Yes.
She was so beyond the point of exhaustion. Even when she did finally go home, she couldn't sleep anyway. She was just awake all night, trying to sleep, going downstairs, coming upstairs, watching TV, not watching TV, and writing about it in this diary constantly, and just got to get to sleep, got to try and get an hour's sleep, anything, just to try and recover. And it just, by this point, she was obviously way beyond being able to just, all right, just have a lie down and go off.
Yes.
You know, far, far beyond that point. She was clearly very unwell by this stage.
Yes.
Where, you know, she was going to need some sort of intervention.
And in fact, that becomes clear because having been discharged from Broomfield according to that plan for her to rest, within 6 days she was in crisis.
Yes, yeah, she was.
As far as you are aware, there was one home visit during those 6 days by members of a community mental health team. And you only know that because Pippa, again, wrote about it.
Yes, that's... I'd need to refer to notes because I can't quite remember from what I've read where.
Yes.
So many diaries and notes and different things, but that's something that she had noted down had happened.
Yes.
I don't know if it was written anywhere in any of her medical notes, as
No.
far as I'm aware.
If we come forwards in time to very late, or on the 22nd of June, I understand that Pippa's husband contacted you to cancel some plans that had been made.
It was a Facebook notice to everyone that plans to go out and have a birthday party were being cancelled.
Yes.
And so we kind of all expected it anyway because we
Yes.
just had a baby and
Yes.
don't really have time to be going out and having birthday parties
No.
right now.
And then I understand that later, much later, so around midnight on the 22nd of June, Pippa's husband contacted you,
Yeah.
and Pippa was in crisis.
Yes, I think it was about midnight, and he doesn't usually call me, so when he called me I was surprised. I was
Yes.
like, what's happened? And he told me that she was hearing voices, and he was worried about her, and that he felt he had no choice but to call an ambulance
Yes.
for her. And I was reassuring him, you've done the right thing. You've done the right thing. She needs to be with people who can look after her. She's clearly unwell. Let's just get her the treatment she needs. And I remember staying up the rest of that night. And I was online looking up mother and baby unit. I didn't know what a mother and baby unit was. I certainly didn't know what postpartum psychosis was. So I was looking these things up, reading about them. I remember any friends I had that had any kind of medical background, messaging them in the middle of the night saying, you won't pick this up till the morning, but do you know anywhere that might have a bed for my sister? The fact that I was asking that means he must have told me that there wasn't a bed for her somewhere. I think he was telling me that they were trying to find a bed for her,
Yes.
but they hadn't found one yet. They were looking for one in London somewhere. I mean, my memory thinks of Hackney. I don't know why. I always seem to think that they were trying to find a bed for her in Hackney or somewhere around there, but it didn't work out.
So Pippa was taken first on that night to the A&E department at Broomfield.
As far as I'm aware, from the medical notes I've seen, that's
Yes.
what I'm told, yes.
And you, at the time, knew very little about what was happening there, but it is clear that no bed could be found on a local mother and baby unit.
As far as I know, that's right. That's what I was told, yeah.
And efforts were then made, as far as you are aware, to find another bed somewhere else on a mother and baby unit.
Yes, yes.
You also understand, I think, Lydia, that although your knowledge of it is very limited, that it appears that Pippa had a very traumatic time during the short period that she was at Broomfield
Yes.
A&E.
Yeah. So she never told me what happened. I didn't dare ask. I thought if she wanted to tell me, she would tell me herself. She would volunteer it. So this was later, obviously, when she was out of hospital. On one of the short breaks, she was out of hospital after this happened. We saw each other a couple of times, on a couple of occasions, and I wanted to ask her, but I didn't know how to ask her. And I thought if she'll either tell me if she wants to or she won't. But I do know that from her husband wrote, after she died, her husband wrote a letter to his MP I think it was about a year later. It was either a part of sort of mental health awareness week or some sort of week like that, where he wrote to his MP and begged him for more beds on mother and baby units around the country.
Yes.
And he published this letter on Facebook for everyone to see as well. And in it he said, my wife was handcuffed to a bed and, treated like left in basically a type of prison cell, but an NHS version of a prison cell, handcuffed to a bed while she was having a manic episode.
Yes.
And all I know from Pippa herself was on one of the occasions I saw her, she asked me for my phone number. I said, what on earth, you don't have my number? And she said, I lost my phone. And it was, when did this happen? She goes, when I went into hospital, I lost my phone and I don't have anyone's phone numbers. And this was obviously weeks and weeks later,
Yes.
after she'd been in Staffordshire and come back. She said she didn't, and I said, so you've not been able to contact me all of this time? She's like, no. And so I wrote it down for her, and I found in her diaries later, she has a back page of a diary where she's handwritten in phone numbers for her, immediate family and close friends.
Yes. So it was at that stage that you discovered that, we don't know the circumstances, but her mobile phone went missing during that short period at Broomfield before she was transferred, and we'll come on to the confusion and uncertainty around where Pippa was transferred to, but she ended at Brockington Mother and Baby Unit in Staffordshire. And during all of that time, and whilst at Staffordshire, she didn't have contact numbers for any of her family or friends.
As far as I know, she didn't.
Yes.
But that was something I found out later.
One of the other things you tell us, Lydia, and we can come back to it, is that you were unsurprisingly shocked to hear that Pippa had been restrained in the way that she was, that you consider that to be that it ought to be a last resort, as a heavy-handed and oppressive measure for a young woman who was in crisis.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're having a panic attack, the last thing you want is someone restraining you and making you even more unable to control your environment and your circumstances.
Yes.
So I'm happy to share with the inquiry that if someone is having a panic attack and melting down and worrying, the last thing you do is then restrain that person and hold them down, stop them from moving, stop them from going where they need to go. You might try and take them to a quiet place. You might try and calm them down or give them space to calm down themselves. But I mean, why were they handcuffing her? Was it because she was at risk to herself? Was she at risk of harming herself? Was she at risk of harming others? Was it because she was just being loud and screaming? What was it? What was the reason?
Yes.
There doesn't seem to be any notes anywhere of why that choice was made and why on earth they felt like that was the best approach. It was simply for convenience. Like,
yes.
This is a difficult patient. Let's just, restrain them over here until they calm down, until the medication kicks in, which seems fairly archaic. I'm not a medical person, I'm not a clinician, but I mean, it just seems fairly barbaric that someone who's in crisis and terrified, the thing you would do to them is then restrain them. Unless, obviously, if they pose harm to themselves, if she's looking to hurt herself, I would understand it. But there's no,
yes.
I don't know if that was the case because there's no reference to why that choice was made.
The other thing that you've noted, and I think this comes from a recollection of your mother's, is that a police officer was in attendance at some stage when Pippa was admitted to accident and emergency at Broomfield, and in a state of obvious confusion and vulnerability and distress, she asked him, "Where is my baby?" To which his response was, "What baby? There's no baby."
Yes, that's what she told me, yeah.
Which, for a young woman in crisis in the way that Pippa was at that stage, I think this links back in a way to what you've been talking about in terms of a continuity of care and the notes that you've described that are always sent everywhere with mothers for appointments.
I mean, it's unthinkable that something like that would happen. It might not seem like it might not seem that important, when you refer to someone just making a comment like that.
I think it does.
But
I think it
if
does.
you've had a baby, you will be having dreams and nightmares that you've lost your baby.
Yes.
Then waking up in a mad panic looking for them. That's what everyone goes through when they have a baby. So imagine that compounded with the fact that you're in a manic state, you're handcuffed, you're in a strange place, and now someone's telling you there is no baby, and you're doubting your sanity, your memories, what's happened to you. I mean, that must have been utterly terrifying for her.
Yes.
That happened. She's like, has the baby, did I not have a baby? Did I not give birth? Did the baby get lost? Has it been given away? Have I hurt the baby?
Yes.
I mean, it must have been utterly terrifying. You know, a new mother's worst nightmare to think that something might have happened to your baby or it's been taken away from you.
Indeed.
And so a trivial comment like that from someone who's untrained and completely unaware of how to support a patient in that crisis, you know, it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't happen to anyone.
No. Lydia, can I ask you to turn, just so that we can place ourselves within your witness statement, to page 16 and to paragraph 51. We don't need to go through it on the page, but this is where you start to explain what you know of, what happened in terms of the efforts that were made and the transports and transfers for Pippa to be found an appropriate bed on a mother and baby unit. I think you understood from her husband, possibly at the time, that a bed had been found, possibly in London, but you're not sure.
That's what we thought at the time.
Yes.
That's what I thought at the time. I'll say I. I thought that a bed may have been made available for her in London, but that she was turned away, she was rejected, and I don't know for what reason, but she was refused the only bed that was available.
Yes.
And when she was what I was told, I believe it was in her husband's letter to his MP, that she was transferred to Staffordshire because it was the only bed available in the whole country at that time on an MBU,
yes,
on a mother and baby unit. So that's why she was transferred hundreds of miles away, because it was literally the only bed in the whole country.
Yes.
I don't know about this reference to a patient being taken. I hope you don't mind me skipping ahead to
Not
Margaret
at all.
Oates. So as part of the preparation of this evidence and having heard some of the information being provided to the inquiry, there is this exhibit list, a spreadsheet, an out of areas bed list that has been provided by EPUT.
Yes.
And there are some rows. Obviously, the data is anonymised, so I cannot be 100% certain that it relates to Pippa, but it is so probably her. I can't believe there could be another patient that went on this same experience at this exact same time, because
Yes.
the dates refer to this time in June in 2016 when she was unwell, and it refers to a patient being sent to Staffordshire and later to Winchester as she went.
Yes.
But that prior to this same patient was taken to Margaret Oates MBU, which I believe is in Nottingham. I think it's in Nottingham, but declined
Yes.
on arrival and sent back. And then it goes on to say patient admitted to Brockington following decline from Margaret Oates MBU, contact from Brockington MBU on the 25th of June.
Yes.
But not clear if this was the date of admission. So this piece of evidence that's been provided by EPUT suggests that my sister may have been taken to Nottingham and declined and sent back to London.
Yes.
Now, if that's the case, it's the first time myself, her husband, or any of us have heard about that happening. So either that happened and we were never told, or it didn't happen and this is completely inaccurate. Either way, neither is preferred. I mean, neither is good.
No.
So how could there be so much, so little awareness of what happened to my sister
Yes.
and where she was taken? Why on earth would this reference even come up unless something happened in relation to Nottingham? Maybe they just inquired about Nottingham and she was declined?
Yes.
And she was never sent there? I don't know.
Part of the problem for you, as I understand it, is exactly that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But as you say in your witness statement, it either shows a very poor system of record keeping,
Mm-hmm.
or a very poor process for communication with families and next of kin.
Yeah.
in no circumstances does it show us anything good, because there remains for you, even to this date, a complete lack of clarity about what happened to Pippa in those hours before she arrived at the mother and baby unit in Staffordshire.
That's right. I don't really know what happened to her. No.
The third possibility is just totally chaotic and inappropriate transfer. Right?
I mean, if there are so few beds, if there are really that few beds in this country for mothers with young babies who are having a mental health crisis, that they have to ferry them around in ambulances hundreds and hundreds of miles just to give them a bed, then we're in really dire circumstances, aren't we? Because these are highly vulnerable. They're vulnerable patients anyway because they're having mental health crisis. They also have a very young, vulnerable person that they are responsible for caring for keeping safe and keeping alive.
Yes.
And in this critical time when they're trying to bond with this new person in their life, the potential of having them taken away, cared for by other people, which could affect that bond, that could affect the patient's ability or confidence in being able to look after that child as a parent. It's such a critical time for anybody. The fact that someone could be having a mental health crisis whilst having this critical time as well, and then being treated in this way of being ferried around, shipped about, not being told what's happening, their family not being told, and to this day still not really knowing what happened. I don't know how we could get to this state of affairs, of being. How could a hospital that's responsible for a patient not know where they've gone, not know what happened to them just because they've gone to a different geographic area? It doesn't suddenly not become their responsibility anymore.
Yes.
Pippa lived in Essex. She was an Essex resident. She's the responsibility of the mental health and the medical services in her area. Because they didn't have enough beds, they didn't have a provision to support her in any way, they're having to ship her off somewhere else and ask somebody else, please take care of this person for us.
Yes.
But the least they could do is stay on top of, keep in touch with and find out what's happening, because she's their responsibility at the end of the day. She's still the responsibility of EPUT, whether she's been treated by them or not.
Yes.
And they should have been making sure that she was being taken care of and making sure that she was safe and asking these important questions. I know resources are tight, but you don't just wash your hands of someone when you go and send them off to another hospital, in my opinion.
As you say later in your statement, the other factor in this is that it's very difficult to see. I think you describe it as Pippa being bounced around between these different units, because after Staffordshire, we'll come on to Pippa staying in a mother and baby unit in Winchester. It's difficult to see, I think is the way that you describe it, how this could be anything other than detrimental to her recovery.
Absolutely.
At a stage like that in her life.
Yeah.
All of these transitions and new environments each time, and a lack of certainty being just one of the many problems.
I mean, I would just ask the chair and anyone listening, imagine you've just had a baby and you're well, and you've had a baby, got this young child to look after, and you're being asked to move to a completely strange place and look after them there. And then 2 days later, you're being asked to pack up all your things and move to another place and look after your baby there. And you've not slept and you've been awake all night. And you're moving and you're somewhere else. And you're far away from your friends. You're far away from your family. And that's if you're well. How hard would that be? Imagine now doing that where you can't trust your own memories, your own thoughts, your own ability, where you lack complete confidence in yourself as a parent, where you're terrified that your baby might be taken away from you if you do the wrong thing, if you say the wrong thing, you behave in the wrong way. It's only natural for someone to then start masking and say, I'm fine, I can take care of it, I can look after them. I can't imagine what she went through. I'll never be able to imagine exactly what she went through, but it must have been so terribly, terribly frightening and terribly hard for her. And it's so deeply unfair that they felt that the best way to treat someone in this state was to continually just send them off somewhere else where they could find a bed, wherever that might be. It wasn't taken into consideration how that distance would affect someone, how that constant transience would affect someone's well-being.
Yes.
I mean, it's only going to make it worse. I understand that there are limitations to resources, and there are not enough beds. We all know there are not enough beds. There need to be more beds, for goodness sake. We're begging you for more beds, more services, more support. But equally, would she have not been better, just not in an MBU, but in an acute ward somewhere where she could have kept the baby with her? Surely that would have been better.
And possibly locally, I think, is what you suggest. So
that she wasn't near her husband, near her other child, near her home, where she was around things that she recognised.
Yes.
I mean, in some ways, she was actually quite lucky with her admission to Staffordshire, because she appears to have had a good stay there of about 6 weeks. She did make a recovery of sorts. She did improve and get better. The mania stopped. Well, she says we feel, there's reference here to she was in mania for those 6 weeks in Staffordshire, and I had no contact with her there. I was discouraged from contacting her. I certainly wasn't given any information about how to contact her. I wasn't even sure exactly where she was. But she did make a recovery, and in her diaries she refers to this very interesting reference in the back of her diary where she talks about when she's better, all the books she's going to write, all the things she's going to do. And one of the things she wanted to do was she wanted to write an account or a book about her experience of this. And she wanted to do she wanted to make a comparison between her experience in Broomfield versus her experience in Staffordshire.
Yes.
One versus the other, how one is a good experience and how one is an awful experience, that being the one in Essex, in Broomfield. Even though she was only there that one night, it was so bad, she actually wanted to write. Can you imagine having an experience that was so bad you wanted to write a book about it afterwards?
And I think she said, did she, that in comparison, one of the things that you found in her notes was that she wanted to nominate Staffordshire for an award because the contrast, or in part the contrast, was so stark between, it was less than a day actually, I think, that she was at Broomfield and the treatment she received at Staffordshire. Whereas you say in your witness statement she experienced some peaks and troughs in her recovery, but she was working her way towards a recovery in that time on the unit in Staffordshire. Lydia, I'm being advised, if this is all right with you, that it might be time for us to take a short break. I think of around about 10 minutes, if you are also content with that, Chair.
That's fine.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
It's true.
Lydia, we were talking before the break about Pippa's time on the unit in Staffordshire, and before I move on to her discharge from there, there is one matter I wanted to note that you tell us about, and this is something you've learnt about from Pippa's diary entries from her time in Staffordshire, which is that she refers to an advocate who appeared to have some sort of oversight and support role in relation to Pippa's care, and that was something, as far as you could see from her diaries, that she appeared to value very much indeed.
Yes, that's right. She has entries in her diary where she has clearly had some sort of induction at Staffordshire, because she's made lots of notes about what to expect and when there are going to be reviews, when there are going to be appointments, and then there's a reference to she has the right to have an advocate who will speak on her behalf, which sounds brilliant. And later there are references to this person's name. This person's name happens to be the same as her best friend's name as well.
I see.
So there's some confusion sometimes when she's referring to this person, whether she's referring to this advocate or whether she's referring to her best friend. But I think when I'm looking through, it appears that these are probably references to the advocate, where she's making lots of positive comments about having someone on her side as to support her, to stand up for her and to back her up on what she's asking for.
Yes, and as far as you're aware, there's no other reference to someone in that role or any kind of advocate at any other time during Pippa's treatment?
Not that I'm aware of. There's no reference to it, and she doesn't make reference to anyone else supporting her.
Yes. Lydia, I understand that Pippa was discharged from the unit in Staffordshire on a date in August 2016. The exact date is not altogether clear. Mm-hmm. And that you saw her, she came to visit you at home on Saturday the 21st of August. You found her at that time. I'm so sorry if you're following. I'm on page 20 of your witness statement,
Great,
at the top of the page.
Okay. Yeah.
As I understand it, on that date, you found her demeanour, you've described it as neutral and flat.
That's right. Yeah, she was. It was a bit of an odd day. I before I had my children, I used to run outdoor events, and I'd had a really big event that week, and a friend was over sort of helping me deconstruct all the bits and pieces from that event in my garden.
Yes.
This friend was in the garden sort of taking this project apart, and I was sort of saying to them, can we hurry up, because my sister's due over and I don't know how she's going to be. I haven't seen her since she left hospital, and I just don't want there to be anything chaotic going on. And there was a lot of mess everywhere, wires and cables and things. And in the end, it did cross over. And I remember her being in the garden and sort of watching what was happening and us putting things away. And she was just very sort of neutral and flat and quiet, not upset, not agitated or anything, just sort of a quiet version of herself.
Yes. We know from the records that by the 6th of October, mm-hmm. in fact, Pippa had again or had been informally admitted to an acute mental health ward in Chelmsford. At the time, you were not aware of that admission, is that right?
I only found out about anything happening in Essex much later.
Much later,
yeah,
I understand. Yeah. And as far as you are aware, in the period after Pippa had been discharged into the community from the unit in Staffordshire, mm-hmm. there appeared to be no community treatments or support of any kind in place.
Well, not that I'm aware of.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, if you're wondering what I'm flicking through here, I sort of made a timeline of events because basically this is how little information I had. I had so little information about Pippa's treatment that I've had to piece together what happened to her from medical reports, from her diaries, from people's memories, from my own diaries.
Yes.
And to try and piece together what actually happened to her and when, because there was lots of contradictory information as well, and I don't know what information I can trust to be the correct information. And I think it's very sad that I'm in a situation where I don't really know exactly what happened to her and when, and that I'm having to basically do detective work to try and work out exactly when did she leave this place and when
Yes.
did she go to that place, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of coherent record.
Yes.
The only record that we've really been able to work from is the report, which I'm sure we'll come on to, which was prepared for her inquest.
Yes.
And obviously that's been prepared by one NHS trust, so the one overseeing Winchester.
That was Southern Health.
That's right. And so therefore, they don't have first-hand information on all of her treatment.
No.
They're trying to piece together bits of information from other trusts and other people's recollections. And unfortunately, that report itself is riddled with inaccuracies, has some errors here and there. So, you know, this was a few years ago now. We're all sort of going back to our recollections of
Yes.
what happened. It's like,
Yes.
well, did she come here then, or was she here then? And how was she feeling on this? And I'm tying up the records of what we remember happening with what she's writing in her diaries on these dates, and trying to see what sort of mental state was she actually in
Yes.
at these times, rather than just trying to see it purely from my own perspective.
Yes,
as
of
best as I
course.
can, anyway.
I understand, and I'm keenly aware that you're trying very hard to piece events together from different sources, some of which you're not even clear whether or not they might be accurate. Mm-hmm. I think it is nonetheless incredibly useful to have your impressions and your recollections of the time. I know that you tell us you were not aware that during, I think, between the 6th of October 2016 and the 11th, Pippa had been admitted to an acute mental health ward.
Of October?
Yes, October 2016.
In Chelmsford. This is something I found out very recently.
Yes.
I didn't know about. And again, it's sort of been pieced together from bits and pieces of information and people's recollections. But yes, apparently she did stay.
Yes.
It's compounded by the fact that we had made arrangements to meet.
Yes.
And she had sent me a text message the day before I was due to meet her saying, I can't meet with you because I have a hospital appointment. That's what she had sent me. It turns out she was actually already in hospital receiving treatment.
Yes.
So she wasn't telling me that she was in hospital receiving treatment at the time. Again, probably to protect me and to not worry me, but she didn't want me to be worrying about her.
Yes.
So she put it that way, like, can we rearrange for next week? When she was expecting to be back home, so she wasn't anticipating to be staying very long in that unit either.
Yes, I understand. And you have no records relating to that stay in the acute ward in Chelmsford.
Nothing.
But you did then see Pippa when she returned home, because you visited her at home on the 13th of October.
Yeah.
And you tell us in your witness statement that at that time she did appear noticeably unwell. You were able to see her agitation.
I'd never seen her that unwell before, ever. So the plan was that I was going to come and visit, and me being me, thought, I know, I'll come, I'll bring a big bag of food, and I'll cook her a nice lunch, I'll make her some sausages and mash or something like that. And I'll make a nice lunch for her so she doesn't have to worry about food, and I'll just help out and I'll be helpful. I'm always going to her house and, I don't know, tidying or cleaning or doing something she probably didn't want me to do, trying to make myself useful. And there's sort of bowl in there, and I brought all this food, and she's very tense and she's very agitated. And both the children were definitely... the eldest child was at school during the day, the baby was at home.
Yes.
I remember making lunch for her, and she got very upset because I had scratched her frying pan, and she was really very, very, very upset about this, which was not like her at all. And I felt terribly guilty then. I was like, oh no, I've made things worse. I wanted to make a meal and I've ruined it. And I was like, I'll buy you another one. I'll get you another one. It's going to be okay. And what would happen is I would be in the front room, like with the baby, holding the baby, playing with the baby, and I would hear her going into the kitchen, shutting the door and saying to her husband, don't want to be here, don't want to be here. And at the time I thought, gosh, she doesn't want me to be here. I should go. I'm making things worse. I should go. And then later I sort of reflected that she was actually probably saying to him, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, because she had been also saying to him a lot at the time how unhappy she was and how she wanted to die, and she was making lots of comments like this. But I at the time didn't know that was happening. I just sort of rolled in, saw that she was a bit tense.
Yes.
But that she would sort of go off. You could hear her. I could hear her sort of getting agitated and upset and saying things like that. She would come in and she'd be like, "Okay, does anyone want a cup of tea?" And then she would sort of be trying to put on a brave face again and be like, "We're all right. We're okay. Everything's okay."
Yes, and that feeds into all that you've told us about her ability either to protect you or because she was so determined to be well and to depend on herself to become well, to mask in that way and to get herself back into a position where she was upbeat, but in fact, as you've said, she was more unwell than you had ever seen her.
Yes, definitely. There was a point in the day where the baby was crying and she didn't know what to do. She just sort of sat on the sofa, and I said, "Do you want to hold the baby?" And she said, "I don't know what to do."
You say in your witness statement that she looked almost frightened.
Yeah.
Yes.
But just not like that she would hurt the baby or anything, but she just sort of looked lost.
Yes.
And our mother was there, and I was like, she was about to take the baby, and I said, "I'm sure Pippa knows what to do, because she's already had a child." And Pippa just looked completely lost, and so our mother took care of the baby.
Yes.
Which was the right thing to do, obviously. But I was like, gosh, she didn't even know how. Like, I was surprised that she didn't not want to hold the baby, but she felt almost that she couldn't.
Yes.
It was like beyond her, like she was going to do it incorrectly, or she was somehow going to get it wrong, and she just looked lost, overwhelmed. Yes. So she wasn't crying, she wasn't weeping, she wasn't being manic, she just looked like a person who'd sort of almost given up. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. You now understand that later that evening, in fact, Pippa took an overdose, and that 2 days after that, I think on the 15th of October, made an attempt to cut her wrists.
So that day that I went to visit was the last time I saw Pippa alive in person.
Yes.
So just to step back once, if that's okay. So I said I was going to go home, and I usually used to walk to the train station. Her husband very kindly offered to drive me the short distance, and I said, well, you don't need to, but I think we were worried I was going to miss a train, and they weren't that frequent. And she asked if she could come in the car with us, which she never did. She was like, bye, usually bye, see you next time.
Yes.
She's like, can I come too? I was like, absolutely. So I think, if I remember rightly, our mother stayed at home with the baby. She got in the car, I got in the car, and her husband drove us to the station. And when I got out, she gave me this huge hug. And it's not that we weren't affectionate, but it was quite unexpected. She gave me this huge, deep hug. And then she sort of almost begged me, can you come back? It was in about a week or two's time, on this exact date. And I was like, oh, well, I have to work that day. And she's like, no, but please, can you try and be here on this date? I was like, well, okay, I'll try and clear my diary and come. If you really want me to be here, I will come. And then I got on the train.
Yes.
It was the last time I saw her. And then as soon as they got home, her husband, I think, went in the other room to check on the baby, and then he came in and discovered her taking some paracetamol.
Yes.
Which she's allergic to paracetamol anyway. And he discovered her after she'd taken maybe 1, 2 or 3, I think, and her plan was to take or something. That was her plan anyway.
Yes.
Which was very upsetting for me to hear.
Of course.
Obviously. Anyway, because you're thinking, what on earth? I knew that she was clearly unwell, but the way that she was speaking to me when we said goodbye, she wanted me to believe we were going to meet again.
Yes.
Make this day free. We'll meet again. I'll see you then.
Yes.
And then with plans in her head to kill herself. So obviously, when I got the news the next day, I think when I spoke on the phone with my mother, she told me what happened. I was like, but she just said to me we were going to meet.
Yes.
And knowing that she was saying that, fully intending to take her own life, it's quite hard to comprehend.
Of course.
As someone who isn't unwell, like, why would she say that?
Yes.
Why would she make plans? Why would she get so upset about this little thing if she was planning to die? Do you know what I mean? It feels very contradictory to rational thinking.
Yes, which of course it is. Yes. And you understand that then on the 15th of October, she was admitted to A&E at Broomfield again, having deliberately cut her wrists.
I think she was attempting, so she had, I don't know fully exactly how much she'd hurt herself, but she had a serrated knife in her hand and was planning to impulsively sort of cut her wrists.
Yes.
So I don't know if she'd actually managed to hurt herself physically or not, but they'd taken her there on that basis, that she had attempted to self-harm.
I understand. And from Broomfield, attempts were again made to find a place for Pippa at a local mother and baby unit, and again, no places were available.
No beds, yeah.
Arrangements were then made for her to be transferred to a mother and baby unit in Winchester. And that is the last inpatient facility that Pippa was transferred to, and it's for that reason, as you understand it, that the investigation report was later carried out by the trust that oversees that unit, Southern Health.
Yes, I mean, from what I know, from having looked at the report drawn up by Southern Health, that when she was admitted, which I believe was on the 16th, she had made a request to be moved to an acute ward,
Yes.
but she was denied. She said she didn't feel she could care for her baby.
Yes.
And that's why she wanted to go on an acute ward, and they said, no, you can't. You have to stay on the NPU.
And I think on that, in fact, what you record in your witness statement is that on 3 or 4 occasions within the first 3 days of her admission to Winchester, she made that request to be transferred to an acute ward.
Yeah.
And on each occasion, that request was denied.
That's right, yeah.
The answer being a form of, let's wait and see.
Yes, that was often the answer to everything, was let's wait and see.
Yes.
Not just at Winchester, but, you know, sorry to step back, but the Chelmsford Acute Mental Health Ward that she stayed in a few days prior, when we look at this in dates, so she was in this acute ward in Chelmsford on the 10th of October.
Yes.
In fact, she was there on the 8th to the 10th, I think.
Yes.
Again, why is she being discharged home? Why is she being discharged home? So she asked to go there. Then when she arrived, she changed her mind and she wanted to go home. But she'd already been admitted, and they're like, let's stay, let's see how you do, let's see how you do.
Yes.
She's being discharged, and within, you know, a day, she's making a suicide attempt. Then the following day, she's being found with a knife. Then the following day, she's been found with another knife.
Yes.
How can someone who is making all these attempts at self-harm and suicide be okay to be discharged only a day before from the Chelmsford Mental Health Ward?
Yes.
How can she be fine? How can they assume she's safe and fine if she's making multiple suicide attempts?
Yes.
Can I just ask, when you refer to her asking to be referred to an acute ward, by that you mean an acute ward in Essex? She wanted to come home, or do you think she wanted just to go onto an acute ward, not a mother and baby unit?
I think she just wanted to go on an acute ward. This is when she arrived at Winchester, so this is just from their report, so it's unclear, if I'm honest. It's unclear.
But you have no...
It just says she makes a request to go on an acute ward. So I assume that means within the hospital in Winchester rather than staying on the mother and baby unit. Because basically what she must have been saying to them is, I can't care for my baby. I don't feel well enough to look after my baby. Can I not go in a ward without the baby? Because I can't. If you're in a mother and baby unit, you're basically still in a room with your baby, caring for your baby next to you. And they're sort of checking in on you and making sure you're okay. It's not like someone is caring for your baby for you. You're still looking after the baby. You're just happen to be in a hospital environment. But ultimately, you're still the primary caregiver. And I think what she must have been saying to them is, I can't take care of the baby. I need to be in an acute ward where someone is taking care of me. And they kept saying, no, you can't go there. You have to look after the baby yourself.
Yes. That's very helpful. One of the things that you note is that when she was admitted, and in the early days of her admission to the unit in Winchester, Pippa was seen as sufficiently high risk that she was on 5-minute observations. She repeatedly expressed, as you've said, her wish to be transferred and that she felt she was unable to take care of the baby.
Mm-hmm.
We also see, and these are matters that you have learnt about from the investigation report, that by the 19th of October, having expressed suicidal thoughts to staff, Pippa was found with a dressing gown cord tied around her neck.
Loosely, yes, loosely
Loosely.
around her neck. She was observed. That's, again, this is purely from the report drawn up by Southern Health, so it's as accurate as their report. But what it states is that having been, so she was admitted, approximately on the 16th. She'd made multiple requests to be moved to an acute ward that day and on the 17th. On the 18th, she's expressing suicidal thoughts. And she's having a review with a consultant psychiatrist. She states that she would like to be dead, she can't see herself getting any better, and she can't take any more. She requests a transfer once again to an acute mental health ward.
Yes.
And the request is denied. And then on the 19th, she's found she's observed, let's say, with this dressing gown belt tied loosely around her neck.
Yes, and Lydia, is this right? What we also know from that report is that just 7 days later, on the 26th of October, Pippa herself, despite that event on the 19th, approached the staff office on the unit and handed in her dressing gown cord,
Yes.
saying that she had again made an attempt, or at least put it around her neck.
She had made a genuine attempt to kill herself. So she had made multiple attempts to strangle herself with
Yes.
the same cord that she'd been observed with a few days before, as you say.
Yes.
And that she had tried to, using a ligature point on the cot bed, tried to take her own life and failed.
Yes.
And then she, yes, as you say, she approached the office just in floods of tears with the cord, saying, please take this away from me.
Yes.
I've tried to take my own life, or something, please. So why she had been left with this ligature at all, why she'd even been allowed into the hospital with the high-risk item of that nature.
Yes.
I mean, I would assume that high-risk patients would have their belongings checked for anything that's high risk before
Yes.
being, once they're admitted. So she's got a dressing gown, she's got a long tie, which is obviously an obvious ligature risk. It's not been taken off her. She's then observed having it tied around her neck. It's still not taken off her. A few days later, she tries to strangle herself with it. And she hands it into the office saying, please take this away from me. And
Yes.
that's the only reason. No one observed her trying to take her own life. No one noticed her taking her own life. She had to come in and volunteer it. And she had all these red marks around her neck, apparently, and she was crying, and she begged them to take it away from her.
Yes. I understand that after that, in a one-to-one meeting with the nurse, Pippa described what you say in your witness statement, a general sense of hopelessness, being afraid of leaving hospital, being unable to care for the baby and her 5-year-old at the time. And that when she was asked, because there was a plan in place at the time for Pippa to go on weekend leave or sort of overnight leave,
Yes.
to go with her husband for the baby's immunisation appointments.
That's right.
So after that event we've just discussed, where Pippa herself handed in this dressing gown cord, she had a one-to-one with the nurse, as I understand it, who asked her if she considered that she could keep herself safe on leave, and that Pippa's answer was, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, just so we don't skip over it as well,
Yes, of course.
in between the cord being found loosely around her neck and the second ligature attempt, she had, in between those few days, also been asking staff to give her paracetamol,
Yes.
which she's allergic to, and which she had tried to take an overdose of only a week or so before. And that wasn't sort of seen as an act of self-harm. They had to sort of check her notes, and she was saying, I'm not allergic to it anymore, And no one seemed to flag up that, why is she asking for these painkillers which she's allergic to? And it's frustrating to read this report. If you look through this Southern report for the inquest,
Yes.
it'll heavily focus on, she's having a really good day today, she's recovering today, she's doing great, she seems to be on the mend, because for 24 hours she hasn't expressed suicidal thoughts, therefore she must be better, she must be well now, she must be improving. They think sort of a 48-hour period of not expressing a wish to kill yourself means that you are improved, you are making a recovery.
Yes, and as you say, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you say in other parts of your witness statement that in fact sometimes those extremes of mood would fluctuate 3 or 4 times within a day.
Yes, yeah. Well, so for example, on that day when she was found with the cord tied around her neck, but she hadn't attempted to hurt herself, that we know of,
Yes.
which was on the 19th of October, she asked for a short period of off-site leave with her
Yes.
husband, and it was agreed, it was approved. So she had been seen with a ligature around her neck, and they said, can I go out for a walk with my husband? Fine, go, have a walk around. There doesn't seem to be any... If there are protocols as to how to manage this, it's unclear or inconsistent what they are.
Yes.
How do you assess the risk of someone to themselves or others? If someone has attempted to kill themselves 12 hours before, are they now no longer a risk?
Yes.
Or if it's 24 hours before, are they no longer a risk? Or a week? Or a month? How do you know when someone is no longer a risk to themselves and others? And obviously it's a case-by-case basis, but there doesn't appear in my sister's case to be any sort of consistent risk assessment process. And I know that risk assessments have come up a lot in this inquiry, and we're sort of looking at how effective they are, how complicated they are.
Yes.
And it is difficult, I'm sure, very difficult. You can't have a one-size-fits-all. But when I'm looking through the evidence of this inquiry, which is looking at risk assessments, of which there are hundreds of pages about risk assessments and lots of guidance and lots of recommendations, but ultimately when you get down to the actual risk assessments themselves, the actual tools, they're fairly basic from what I can tell. It's a sort of the suicide high risk assessment is a series of a few questions sort of to assess how are you feeling today, you know, sort of out of this score. And the questioning that seems to be made of my sister at this time was always, do you feel you can keep yourself safe? That generally was the question. Can you keep yourself safe? Yes or no? Yes. You know, and if she can answer yes to that, fine, you go out, do something, do whatever you like, go, you know, or maybe let's stagger, you know, your exposure. So you're allowed to walk around the grounds, then maybe you're allowed to go into town, and then maybe you're allowed... And I understand that staggered approach makes sense, it's logical, but it doesn't seem to take into account when a patient then will have a dip or a low. It's like, well, let's go back and accept that you've had a lower period and start again. It seems to just say, oh, you had a little blip, but it's fine, you're better today, so let's continue doing what we were doing. Let's continue progressing forward. Yes. Let's set a date for when you will be, in inverted commas, well, and let's try and get you out of hospital by this date, because that's how human beings work. And unfortunately, it just isn't. People don't get well according to a timetable or a schedule. No. You have to sort of see. I mean, you know, Pippa had highs and lows because of, you know, environmental factors as well. Yes. She was having a couple of days where she was doing better, then the date of her baby's immunisation changed and got pushed back a couple of days, and she suddenly went downhill. She suddenly became very depressed because she thought she was going home, and now she has to wait an extra couple of days. So suddenly she's very, very down again, having a low period. Yes. And then asking for paracetamol from the staff because she can't take it anymore, because she was planning to go home and now it's been delayed. How can you keep the same risk assessment from a week ago or 2 weeks ago in place for a person that's now had this new information and this new news?
Yes, I understand. I think this feeds into one of the matters that you have set out in the latter part of your witness statement about recommendations for change, where you talk about a need for standardisation of risk assessment.
Well, certainly consistency. I mean, like I said, human beings are all unique. It's very hard to make a standard risk assessment for people, I'm sure. And I'm not a clinician, but it seems... I cannot fathom or comprehend the current risk assessment process, because at the moment it seems to be just a series of a few questions of how are you feeling? Can you rate how you're feeling? Do you feel you can keep yourself safe? Yes or no? And maybe this has indeed changed, but it doesn't seem to take into account all the other factors. Yes. So has the patient recently had some news? Has the patient recently expressed these thoughts in a group therapy session? Yes. Has the patient been, I don't know, eating normally? Or, I mean, maybe these conditions are considered, but it doesn't seem obvious to me as an outsider looking at the risk assessments that these are taken into account. So it doesn't seem, with the risk assessments I've seen so far, and apologies, Chair, if I have missed this within all the evidence that's been provided, because there's so much of it. But when looking through some of the risk assessment guidance that was provided by EPUT, I couldn't see, and forgive me if I've missed this, I couldn't see a risk assessment tool which used a risk matrix. Yes. You know, where you would look at not just the severity of risk, but the probability. And as you would with anything else, in any other industry, when you're doing a risk assessment, you would do a calculation matrix. It's not just how severe that risk is, but how likely it is. Yes. And you're calculating the likelihood of this person harming themselves is now in this sort of zone. because the probability has changed.
Yes.
The severity is the same, but the probability has now changed. And surely that should be an ongoing, risk assessment should be an ongoing process throughout a patient's treatment, because they will be going through highs and lows, and things will change, and parameters will change, and circumstances will change.
Yes.
And the feeling I get from reading through Pippa's reports, and from hearing from some of the other call participants, and from hearing from evidence from EPUT themselves, it feels very much that when a patient is admitted, and apologies if I have misunderstood this, but it feels like when a patient is admitted, a plan is made that this patient will have this treatment and will get better by this date. And let's keep working towards getting this patient better by this date.
Yes.
And even if they have hiccups and ups and downs, we will continue to target, because we need to clear this bed for the next patient.
Yes, and you've described those as arbitrary targets.
Mm-hmm.
And you've said that you're very interested to try to understand why that is seen as some sort of an acceptable model of care, to set targets in that way.
Well, I think I know why. It's due to limited resources,
Yes.
limited beds, limited staff. We all know this. There's not enough money, there's not enough staff, there's not enough beds. Let's move people in and out. If someone is well enough to go home, let's get them home.
Yes.
If they're home, they're going to do better, they're going to do better. But I don't understand where that attitude has come from. Like, as if someone is at home, they will make a more rapid improvement. I'm sure with some patients that is the case.
Yes.
Some patients will do better at home, but not all. And it's almost as if we can get someone home, they are better. They have
Yes.
made a recovery. They're doing well. Keeping them in hospital may not be improving their chance of getting better. And I just think that seems rather generalised across the board for everyone.
Yes.
It did seem that some of the evidence I heard from expert witnesses and from EPUT was very much about, we found that people staying in hospital longer doesn't necessarily mean better outcomes.
Mm.
But people are individuals, and this sort of need to push people through their treatment and see their recovery as quickly as possible, I don't believe is in patients' best interests. I believe that we should be taking it on a case-by-case basis and saying, you know, actually this patient is struggling, this patient is not getting better, what we're doing does not appear to be working effectively. Let's try another course, let's change this plan and not keep to this target date.
Yes.
I recall a comment being made by an EPUT representative of, oh, well, you know, if we don't set a target date, they just stay. They just don't go. They stay in. They don't leave, and we don't know how long they're going to be here for. And it's like, well, maybe that's what that patient needs, is not the pressure to be better by a certain date. Maybe we need to give a patient time to actually recover.
And assess it on a case-by-case basis, as you say.
Yes, and
Yes.
it does sometimes feel that, you know, how can it be less expensive to continually admit and discharge a patient into multiple different hospitals with multiple different teams and different staff? How is that saving money? How is sending Pippa to Staffordshire, to Chelmsford, to Winchester, to possibly Nottingham, back home, into hospital, back home again? How is that more affordable than perhaps just sending her to an MBU where she can get better in her own time?
Yes.
Where the staff there get to actually know her and know her condition and can tell, because they know her, that she is in fact actually improving.
Yes.
And is it too much to ask or expect that that unit can be a short distance from a person's home and not 200 or 300 miles or a 3 or 4 hour drive? Because that does make a difference. Being far from home does limit your recovery, and it delays your recovery.
Yes.
And I don't think you need to be a clinician to know that.
Thank you.
Okay.
In summary, in spite of that act of self-harm that we've discussed, which took place on the 26th of October, and although the duty doctor did call Pippa's husband to tell him about that, the decision was made that her home leave would go ahead as planned.
It would be delayed, I think, by a day.
Yes.
So the plan was that she was going to go home, and because she had attempted to end her life, they thought, let's keep her in for a night and see how
Yes.
she's doing tomorrow.
That evening, on the 26th of October, staff observed that Pippa appeared to have become physically unwell. There was some sort of D&V bug on the ward that
Yeah.
Pippa appeared to have contracted.
That's right. So she unfortunately caught a really nasty virus or some sort of vomiting bug whilst off of the ward. There had been a staff member off at the time with a similar virus.
Yes.
And so it's assumed that something was going around. So she had become physically unwell. And then, of course, because she was physically unwell, she was then put into isolation,
Yes.
which only exacerbated her anxiety and desperation to go home.
Of course. So she was asked to stay in her room.
Yes.
So as not to infect the rest of the ward.
That's right.
In the background, she had been saying, and you've seen this in the records, that she desperately missed her family, desperately wanted to be at home.
Yeah.
And I think you've noted, in relation to the discussion we had about this question that is asked in a risk assessment, do you feel able to keep yourself safe? The truth is that, as you see it, Pippa probably felt terribly conflicted in giving an answer to that question.
Yeah.
Because she desperately wanted to be at home and wanted the answer to be yes,
Yeah.
I feel able to keep myself safe. And I think part of what you're saying is that the evidence was there that despite her best efforts, she was unable to do so at that time.
And it's a natural reaction to have. If you're somewhere where you're miserable and you want to go home, you give the answers that are required to go home.
Yes.
So why would you say, oh no, I don't feel I can keep myself safe, oh no, I don't think I can take care of my children or myself, and I'm a risk to myself.
Yes.
Because you know that you're going to be required to stay longer. So it's only natural
Indeed.
that she would have said that, because she was so horribly miserable on this
Yes.
ward. Yeah.
As a result of that, and that she was far from home, in fact, I understand that efforts had been being made to find a bed in a mother and baby unit closer to home. And by the following day, the 27th of October, a bed had become available in Chelmsford.
That's right. I believe it was the 27th.
Yes. At that stage, though, it was decided that Pippa was too unwell to be transferred to another mother and baby unit because of the physical symptoms
I
that
think
she was then...
Yes, sorry to interrupt.
No,
I
no,
think there
go
was
ahead.
a concern of infection control.
Yes.
So they didn't want to transfer her to the Chelmsford MBU because they were concerned that she would bring the virus to that unit. So
I understand.
they were keeping her in isolation in Winchester. But what's ironic is that they still agreed to send her home because
Yes.
they didn't feel there was a necessity for her to be in isolation at home.
Yes. So the decision was, it was decided that the bed at the MBU in Chelmsford would be held until Monday the 31st of October.
Yeah.
And just to ensure that I understand, she was to go home to Essex, and then she was to return to the unit in Winchester on Saturday the 29th of October, only to be returned to Essex again on Monday the 31st of October. That was the plan.
This is what I gather from the reports that I've seen.
Yes.
Which doesn't make any sense to me at all. There's basically a bed at her local MBU near her home, which she's been trying to get into all of this time. The bed is being held for her,
Yes.
and Winchester decide that it's in her best interests, instead of being kept in their specialist mother and baby unit, where she's in isolation, instead to send her home. And then I see notes to the effect that she was going to go back there to be formally discharged. So she's not been discharged. She's on home leave for a night.
Yes.
As part of this plan to prepare the person. You know, little bit of leave, little bit of local leave, little bit of home leave, then discharge. But the point is that she's not being discharged. The plan was to transfer her to another MBU because she clearly needed more treatment.
Yes.
But nonetheless, she was desperate to go home, and the ward, I'm sure, probably didn't want her around if she was infectious.
Yes.
So they were like, let's send her home for the night. then we'll formally discharge her and she can go to the Chelmsford MBU on the Monday.
Yes.
But as I was not aware of it, my mother was not aware that the plan was for her to go back to Winchester. And the only reason I know that or believe that that was the case is because I've seen it in her notes.
I understand.
But I don't know if that was really ever going to be the plan or not. I don't know.
Thank you. Lydia, I'm being told that it's 1:15, or a little bit after that, and Chair, I wonder if this might be the time for us to break for lunch. I'm being asked that we might need a 45-minute lunch break, if you're content with that.
Fine.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.